What's up, San Diego, and a happy Saturday edition of the Braden Surprenant Show, if you will, but just live reaction to the reported news today that Griffin Canning and Nick Castellanos have been added to the San Diego Padres. Very interesting news, especially after yesterday when we talked about on the show about Nick Castellanos and maybe a lot of the drama that circled around him in Philadelphia. And as I look at this again, and I said it yesterday, I thought it would be very difficult for the Padres to potentially bring him in due to a lot of the stories that came about. But there's two ways to look at this. You can look at it from a negative perspective that we looked at it yesterday, or you can look at it from the positive perspective of when you take the chance like this, it's only really going to cost you the league minimum. And the worst thing that could potentially happen with this particular signing, if you will, would be, and this is, it's so extreme that it might not even happen. But like the worst thing that happens is he doesn't jive well in the clubhouse and he's never been able to, and not to say he's never been able to, but he doesn't drive well in the clubhouse and it ruins the vibe for the rest of the year, which I don't think that's possible to do. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. In terms of overall, when you're looking at this signing from a general perspective, it's definitely a risk that I don't think a lot of teams wanted to take after the article that came out of Nick Castellanos. But the thing the Padres have, though, is with their vibes of the clubhouse, I think a lot of the boxes are checked where Nick Castellanos can get a new lease on life in San Diego. You look at the first one, and the first one to me is Manny Machado. Nick Castellanos and Manny Machado are from the same hometown in Florida. They are from the same area in Florida, and they grew up apparently not too far from each other. They've spent some time, but at least that's on document of what's been researched for people out there. They were both on the same 18U Team USA national team. Again, both from Miami, both from the same area in Miami. So there's obviously a history there between Nick Castellanos and Manny Machado. And with that, I think that brings a big factor into the decision for the Padres to bring Nick Castellanos in, because the thing is, if he's going to jive with somebody, it's going to be Manny. And now this is the job for the captain to make sure that Nick Castellanos is on board. But here's the other thing, too. I think with all the negative pub around Nick Castellanos, there's a real chance that he can take this to heart. And if he still wants to continue to play baseball and he still thinks he has a little bit left and he has the chip on his shoulder for the way things happen in Philadelphia, he can really use this opportunity to prove to everybody that he is a good player. And the thing is, again, with the Padres, is if worse comes to worse, I don't think a lot of the players on this Padres team really are going to be that affected by Nick Castellanos if things don't work out and he ends up getting sent elsewhere. I honestly don't. I think it's a risk. I think there's a risk for him to potentially have some issues with this team. But at the same time, how many times have we seen guys that now have a new lease on life and get a new opportunity change their ways? And Nick Castellanos, you got to give him credit. You got to give him an opportunity now. He said he's going to take what he learned in Philly and use it to make him better. Now he has to prove it, but from that perspective, this is all the negative side of things for Nick Castellanos. It's still an understandable decision for the Padres, an organization that is looking to add to their lineup, is looking to get a guy that's got a bat, is looking to do it in a cheap way. And for what Nick Castellanos brings on the field, which we're going to talk about next, it's not that big of a risk. The biggest risk, again, is the clubhouse. But so far, as you've seen the media in the clubhouse with the Padres and asking them about the reported signing, again, it's not official yet as I'm recording this on a Saturday morning. From that and the fact that the players are on board, hey, look, we're going to let the guy do his thing and be part of this team, I think that's already off to a good start. I think the fact that he knows players in this clubhouse is off to a good start. Some of the problems that he had in Philadelphia don't necessarily apply in San Diego. If you look at that Athletic article, some of the problems that Nick Castellanos had about Philadelphia was the big market, the high pressure of that. And not to say San Diego is not a high pressure market and like the fans aren't going to get upset if he doesn't play well, but it's a little bit different than Philly. Like Philly's one of the most extremes, and it takes a lot to play in Philadelphia. And a guy like Nick Castellanos, who in that Athletic article had stated that he wanted to go to Miami, which is more of a vibe that is like San Diego, you look at the situation that he's in with the contract, with the team he's on, with the qualms that he has with certain things, and there's a lot of them in there. The Phillies don't check a lot of boxes with Nick Castellanos, but the San Diego Padres do. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the Padres and you look at how they're set up, Nick Castellanos and some of the things that he wanted out of an organization, the Padres check those boxes. He doesn't have the high pressure. It's not a big market where people are like losing their minds all the time and have like crazy threats to players when they don't play well, like they do in Philadelphia. In San Diego, it's a little bit more of a chill vibe. I think we all know that here in San Diego. It's a little bit different. Not to say that we don't hold the players accountable, but at the same time, it's just a different environment. That's number one. Number two, Nick Castellanos, big on the fact of playing for a manager and a coaching staff that had played in the major leagues. If you look at this coaching staff, they've played in the major leagues. In fact, Craig Stammen has recently played in the major leagues. I think it's a major plus for Nick Castellanos having a guy like Craig Stammen. I know he's a rookie manager, but if the whole situation with Castellanos not seeing eye to eye with his coaching staff, most notably his manager because they didn't play in the big leagues, you have that here in San Diego. The hitting coach played in the big leagues. Steven Souza Jr. has played in the big leagues. And so Nick Castellanos has that fit now where it seems a little bit more comfortable for him in this perspective. Now, the way that things spiraled out of control with Nick Castellanos in Philly, it led to a little bit of a downturn when it comes to his overall production. He had arguably the worst year of his career last year in Philadelphia, a negative 0.8 WAR. He had a 250 average, an 88 OPS plus. All of those are like the lowest that he has had in his career, but the upside is still there. He's 33 years old, and I think with a new environment and an environment that probably suits Nick Castellanos more, there's a reason to be optimistic because it's not going to cost the Padres a lot. And to be honest with you, I would much rather have a guy like Nick Castellanos at age 33 making league minimum than bringing in an older, aging player that's past his prime, and a guy like Jason Hayward, a guy like Yuli Gurriel, a guy like Nelson Cruz, some of the players that the Padres have brought in the past to be part of this team as those low risk, high reward players. For a low risk for Nick Castellanos, you could do a lot worse. So if he's willing and able, which I think it sounds like he is, to learn from his experience in Philadelphia and put it behind him and lean on guys like Manny Machado and be that player, that team player that I think Philly wanted him to be, I think he has a really good chance of having a great redemption story and maybe be a comeback player of the year. I said it on my show. I was not super in on this particular deal. If you had other options out there, the Padres are running out of options. And if you look at Nick Castellanos and all of the baggage that he might have, it's still better than what might be available out there in terms of a bat. Now, where does he play? To me, it's going to be a DH. He's not great defensively. It's a big reason why they took him out of games late defensively in Philadelphia. I know he's going to get some work at first base. Miguel Andujar is also not very good defensively. But if you play this right and Nick Castellanos is a DH, I think the Padres, it's a lot better of a bat to the lineup. It gets you popped. The ceiling is there. And if it doesn't work out or if they soil fast, you can make the easy cut. And that's the other thing too. Like Nick Castellanos had leverage in Philadelphia because he knew that they can't just get rid of him. They'd have to pay $20 million to just get rid of him. If you're the Padres, you have all the leverage because if he doesn't want to play or if he doesn't want to play by your terms, it's not gonna be a big cost to the Padres. And the Padres are giving Nick Castellanos a great opportunity to play for a team that's going to be competitive in 2026. So overall, despite all the negativity that might be surrounding Nick Castellanos, I could see this being a sign for the Padres that turns into something that could be pretty good. And I said it on the show. I was not super interested in it, but I'm curious to see how this plays. And the thing is, Nick Castellanos could potentially have a comeback level story. And the one that I think about the most when it comes to this, the player I think about the most is, and how many times has this happened with the Padres where players come in and they said they didn't give the best effort in San Diego, and then they go somewhere else and they have this realization and then they like turn their game around. And I think of Sean Manaea. Now, Sean Manaea is not one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, but he has had a couple of good years since being in San Diego where he wasn't that great, and he learned from those mistakes, and he has now made himself better. Now the Padres have an opportunity to have one of those players on their team. It sounds like the clubhouse is ready to embrace him. If Nick Castellanos buys in, this is a big move for San Diego and could be that sneaky move, that low-cost, high-ceiling move that the Padres need to make a push. The other one is Griffin Canning. And I spent a lot of time on Nick Castellanos already. But Griffin Canning, I think, is a good move for the Padres. Now, who knows what his health status is going to be? Again, it's being reported that Griffin Canning, I had Divine Sports Gospel last night, put it out that Canning was going to be a Padre. They swooped in and got everybody else on that particular deal. But if you look at Griffin Canning, we're going to have to figure out exactly where he's at medically, because it sounded like he threw a bullpen not too long ago over at UCLA in front of a lot of scouts where he ended up playing baseball at. He is a UCLA grad. He's a SoCal guy. Went to Santa Margarita Catholic High School here in Southern California, from Mission Viejo originally. He was 7-3 with a 3.77 ERA last season before he ended up rupturing his Achilles. So who knows where he's at in terms of like full go, if he's at that level yet. But for Griffin Canning, this is a nice ad for the Padres. We'll see what the details are. As of right now, I haven't seen any of the details as I'm recording this of terms of the contract, but I would imagine it's probably going to be something similar to a prove-it deal that AJ Preller has handed out in the past. And so you add a guy like Griffin Canning, he's going to be 30 years old this year. Again, coming off of injury, which is like a lot of the other pitchers on this staff. I think it's a good ad for San Diego. I tweeted it out. He was in the middle of potentially putting up a huge year and one of his best years he's ever had before he ruptured his Achilles. He was off to a really good start with the New York Mets, and he finished last year, like I said, 7-3 at the 3.77 ERA. So now you have Canning competing for a rotation spot, 4-5, wherever it may be, and who knows where he's at health-wise before the season starts. But you're going to have Griffin Canning. You're going to have Tristan McKenzie. Guys got like Randy Vasquez, who was supposed to be almost a lock for the number 4 spot. Guys like JP Sears working, guys like Matt Waldron working. So you have a lot of different players that are mixing in with this team to make competition in the starting rotation. And you look back to some of the ads that the Padres made on the offensive side of things. And I talked about Nick Castellanos, Miguel Andujar. Jose Miranda is part of this organization now. He's got an invite to camp. He's trying to play for an opportunity to be on this team. Sung Moon Song, a good depth piece. The Padres are starting to piece things together right now when it comes to a roster, and they're doing it within the budget constraints that they have, in the budget constraints that AJ Preller has. And overall, I think these moves are the perfect moves that they need in order to get locked in on a roster and see how spring training works out. For Nick Castellanos, it's a risk, right? It is still a risk to bring him in based on what happened in Philadelphia. But you know what? It's a risk that the Padres are willing to take, and it could pay high dividends. And we know how AJ Preller works. He takes a lot of chances on players that have had situations in the past where teams have given up on them, and it's worked out very favorably for the San Diego Padres. And I expect that to be the case again this time. And here's the thing. It's not like you're giving Nick Castellanos $5 or $6 million, and you got to eat that money if he doesn't jive with the clubhouse. He's making league minimum, and the Phillies are paying him to play against them. And the All-Star game this year is in Philadelphia. Maybe a little extra chip for Nick Castellanos this season. Not saying he's going to be an All-Star, but there's a lot of goals and motivations for Castellanos after that article came out, with everything that happened in Philadelphia, for him to have a big year. And I think Griffin Canning's in that category too. His is more from an injury, but he's a former Gold Glove winner back in 2020 when he was 24 years old with the Angels. He's still really young. Him working with Ruben Niebla, I think, is going to be great. And this team is starting to piece together. So I'm going to be off on Tuesday, or I'm going to be off until Tuesday. That's why I want to get this out there. But this is my live reaction to Nick Castellanos, Griffin Canning coming to the Padres. Overall, those are moves that I think are going to help the ball club out, and they're not going to be catastrophic. They're not, even the worst case scenario is still not something that's going to sink this ship. So I think it's a risk, but I think it's a risk that the Padres might be able to turn into a massive reward.